us today. This is the second webinar of our 2023 Policy for the People series, and we're so glad to see you here. This is a monthly series through the fall, and Allie is going to share the link to register for the next webinar in the chat. So if you're not registered for that yet, please go ahead and register. It's going to be really exciting. Next month, we will be unveiling our legislative priorities for the upcoming legislative session. If you haven't already done so, thank you for putting your name and affiliation in the chat. And I do want to note that today we're going to have plenty of time for questions and answers after the presentation. So please have your pen and pad next to you and write down your questions as Max and I go through this presentation, and stick around after the presentation to talk. And I think, Allie, you can go ahead and start moving the slides forward. Thank you. So what we're going to do today is a brief introduction of the Rhode Island Food Policy Council. We know there are some new friends on the webinar today. We're going to talk a bit about what we mean when we talk about our food system. We'll share some high-level state data. And then, of course, the main dish today is to dive more deeply into our new municipal level data resources. Max is also going to be presenting a case study to get you started thinking about how your city or town can use this information. And again, we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers after the presentations. So you can go ahead and advance. Thank you. First, I just want to share our mission, which is to build an equitable, accessible, economically vibrant, and environmentally sustainable food system for all Rhode Islanders. I just want to point out that equity is the first word in this mission statement. And as a staff and as council members, we work every day to integrate this into all that we do, whether our particular area of focus is on food access, our food economy, or food and our environment. This commitment to equity is organization-wide, and it's grounded in our belief as a network that many negative aspects of Rhode Island's current food system are grounded in a history of colonialism, genocide of indigenous people, slavery, private ownership of land, and the concentration of wealth and power in the hands of too few people. We also recognize that people with visible and non-apparent disabilities are among the most marginalized groups in our country. The Council believes that when power shifts to be shared more equitably across our communities and our state, we transform our future together for generations to come. And sharing this information today is part of our commitment and our effort to shift power in this way. So I just wanted to start out by saying that. How do we do the work that we do? So we do work in three big buckets: partnerships, programs, and policy. We develop partnerships with non-governmental organizations, community-based organizations, state agencies, and other entities. And oftentimes those partnerships lead to programs that fill critical gaps in food access and for food business. We often are addressing issues that can't be fixed through particular projects and programs, and that's really when we focus on policy that can span from advocating for the passage of laws and resolutions to the development of emergency feeding and land use plans, to providing guidance to public decision makers and elected officials about how to prioritize public expenditures. And when we talk about the food system, we're really paying attention to the entire food system. This means, if you look at that inner circle of our arrows, food production, processing, distribution, retail, consumption, including food access, and the way that we manage our food waste. And it also includes the outer circle, the yellow words that you can see, that all the elements of the food system need in order to operate properly, including clean air and water, healthy soil, and access to capital and land, and of course, a supportive policy environment. So there are a lot of different actors when we think about this system, and in really understanding how we can have an impact, it's important to know who we are as Rhode Island food system stakeholders. We invite everyone to become part of the Rhode Island Food Policy Council, and that includes caretakers of the land and water, our food producers, our food processors and entrepreneurs and distributors, the retailers and restaurants, free and low-cost food providers, meaning our pantries and our state food bank, institutional buyers like hospitals and colleges and universities, and of course our K through 12 schools, all consumers, and our food waste facilities as well. So all of those stakeholder groups, entities from all of those stakeholder groups are welcome to participate in important parts of addressing inequities in the system. So what I want to do next is share a few state-level food system metrics and impacts that we feel are really critical to understand as we go into a deep dive in the municipal level data. The first one I want to share is related to Rhode Island's total food system sales. So the food system encompasses, as we mentioned, all of the people and resources and processes involved in moving food from the farm and the ocean to the plate. And we helped to prepare a regional analysis that estimated the value of sales for agriculture and fisheries and food. And what we found was that Rhode Island generated nearly $12 billion in sales in 2017, which is the most recent year for which we have data. That's equal to about 6% of sales on the regional level. So that's 6% of the 190 billion across the region. And in 2017, you can see that wholesaling, which includes all the different types of food distribution, was the biggest generator of sales, and that was followed by stores and restaurants. We also wanted to share a little bit of information about food system employment. Right in this slide, you can see that at the state level, the total employment is the top line, but non-food system employment is in the dark blue, and food system employment is in the light blue. We have about almost 65 or 70,000 people who are employed in our state's food sector. And that stays pretty consistent. You can see it dips when we have events like the pandemic or the Great Recession. But the economy is growing overall, and our food sector employment and sales are staying a consistent part of that. On the next slide, we wanted to show you the greenhouse gas emission inventory that the state presents. So this in the state, we passed the Act on Climate in 2021, which set greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets that of 10% below 1990 levels by 2020, 45% below by 1990 levels by 2030, and 80% below by 2040, and reaching net zero emissions by 2050. So the Department of Environmental Management estimates emissions by economic sector, and that's what this chart is showing you. Food system activities and their greenhouse gas emissions are embedded throughout Rhode Island's economy. So part of transportation, part of electricity consumption, part of refrigerant emissions as well. It's not just the agriculture piece, which you can see makes up a very, very small line. It's the very topmost light green line that you can see on these bar charts. But if we apply the estimate that 25% of US greenhouse gas emissions are generated by food system activities, you can extrapolate that Rhode Island yields a result of over 3 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalents. So again, a lot more than you see just on that agriculture line. I just want to note here, since we're going to be focusing on the municipal level, that there were a couple of opportunities announced very recently for your town or city to integrate food systems into municipal climate resilience planning. The Division of Statewide Planning just announced that they're offering 2 municipal technical assistance program webinars, one about planning for a climate resilient community, and one about community planning for a livable future, which focuses on transportation. The application deadline for these is Monday, October 2nd, and I believe Ali is going to be putting the link to sign up for those in the chat. What we want to note is that there's an opportunity here when you're thinking about planning for a climate resilient community to weave in food systems and food sector activities into that plan. And the final slide that I want to share is our total food insecurity percentage. An average of 12%, which is over 35,000 households of here in Rhode Island were food insecure in general over the past 20 years. An average of 8% of food insecure households had low food security, and then there were others that had very low food security, which is the lighter blue line, and that indicates disrupted eating patterns and reduced food intake. So food insecurity, as you can see, increased when we had periods of time like the Great Recession. And you can see that it didn't increase that much when you look at 2020 to 2022. That was really because of a major increase in safety net resources that are believed to have buffered the overall impact of the pandemic on food insecurity. However, some data is showing as those safety net resources are removed, that the numbers are beginning to go up again. So we keep this state level data up to date on our dashboard. And I think Ali, again, will put the link to the dashboard in the chat. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Max to do our deep dive into the municipal level information.
Thanks, Nessa. Thanks everyone for joining today. I'm so excited to be sharing our municipal food systems action packet with you all today. So now that we have some context for the state overall food system and just how big and important it is, as well as how it's failing some of the most vulnerable citizens that we have, let's talk about how we can use information at the municipal level to strengthen our local food systems and overall strengthen our state. So our new municipal fact sheets are designed to support you in understanding your town or city food system, as well as supporting your municipal officials with strengthening your local food system. So I want to begin by encouraging you all to open up your town's fact sheet. As you can see on the slide, the directions are there for how to access it. First, go to our website, rifoodcouncil.org, click the resources tab on our homepage. From there, click on the municipal fact sheets page. And on that page, you'll have access to your town and every town's fact sheet, as well as our new action sheet and toolkit. So with that, next slide, please. I want to give you all a little bit of background for why we decided to update our fact sheets right now. So in late 2022, the Food Policy Council decided it was time to update our fact sheets. These fact sheets were last updated pre-pandemic in 2019. And we realized that a lot of the data was no longer accurate to what the municipalities were actually experiencing in terms of their food systems. So we decided to conduct a data update, as well as interview some municipal officials from across the state in order to get information on how we can make these documents most useful for them in their context and how we can use those to strengthen the work that they're doing. So through these conversations with municipal staff, we learned a couple of key things. One is that the data needed to be contextualized. So this led us to create a refresh design and include some contextualizing information on the fact sheet. We also learned that municipal leaders were interested in having some sort of map to understand what their municipality looks like. And so we created a new feature that uses the U.S. Geological Survey's most recent 2019 land use map. And we clipped that to each of the towns, which you'll see later on. So municipalities could look at a high level of how they're using land across that municipality. And then finally, we also learned that municipal officials were in need of some more context outside of just what the data means, but how to use it, where it can go from here once they're looking at that data. And so for that, we decided to develop a new toolkit to accompany these fact sheets that can provide municipalities with more information on how to use this data now and going forward. So in order to collect this data, in addition to using the map from the U.S. Geological Survey, like I just mentioned, we also compiled and analyzed metrics from a variety of secondary sources. These sources included both government, such as RIDO, RIDE, and DEM data, as well as nonprofit data, such as Farm Fresh Rhode Island, the Community Food Bank, and others. I want to state here that we do know that this data is incomplete. Unfortunately, there's no one repertoire of all this data across the state. And so because of that, we do our best to collect as much data as possible, but we always encourage folks who have additional recommendations for data sources to reach out to us at info@rifoodcouncil.org, and we can try to use that data in strengthening these fact sheets and making them more accurate to the information in each of your systems, each of your municipalities. Thanks, Ali, for dropping that in the chat. And finally, I know that we've gotten quite a few questions from several folks regarding the definitions used for each of our metrics. So these definitions are the same definitions that we used with our 2019, our 2018, and 2017 fact sheets. So these are the same definitions that we used before, and those are also available on our website in the methodology section at the bottom of the Municipal Fact Sheets webpage. So if you're looking for more information of how we defined different metrics, I encourage you to look at the methodology report for more information. So with that, let's dive into the fact sheet. So we decided that as an example, we would include North Kingstown. So this here you can see is the North Kingstown fact sheet. And as you can see, there's a lot of contextualizing for this data. Each data includes both the town's population as well as various metrics around the food system that we have. And we thought that was key in order to help contextualize this overall system. So next to the population data, we also have our map. As you can see here, this is the map for North Kingstown. And this can help both municipalities and community members understand where geographically there is a need for more environmentally friendly or food systems informed land use. And that can take a variety of shapes and sizes depending on the needs of each municipality. But looking at this from a geographic standpoint can help us identify where there may be additional need for either more sustainable land use or more targeted supports for folks in more rural aspects of different municipalities. Next, we divided our food system metrics into three rather broad categories. First being food and economy, second being land use and sustainability, and the final being food access and security. So as you can see here on the screen, for each category, we have several metrics within each. This here is the example for food economy, where we have the number of restaurants, farmers markets, food markets, SNAP dollars used at farmers markets, as well as the number of food processors, food distributors, and the annual fee that the municipality pays to landfill their residential food waste. And all of this data is within the context of the state overall. We heard from a lot of municipalities that having just their city or town's information was not enough, but they wanted to be able to look at their city or town within the greater state context. Next, we have our land use and sustainability metrics. Underneath this category, we have the number of aquaculture farms, commercial fishery farms, annual tons of residential food waste, so the actual amount of food waste that they're sending to the landfill, as well as the number of food waste recycling facilities in that municipality, and whether or not the public school district there purchases locally grown food. And finally, for our metrics under food access and security, we have congregate meal sites, food pantries, the number of Meals on Wheels home delivery recipients. We have SNAP participants, students enrolled in free or reduced price meals, and WIC participants, again, within the context of the state overall. And as I mentioned previously, each of these metrics is used to help identify where the town is currently to sort of help establish a baseline, and with the additional context that we provide on the fact sheet, opportunities for the municipality to grow in their work there. So in order to do that, we also developed a one-pager, which you can see here. This is our quick action sheet, and this includes 4 top-line recommendations for each municipality on how to use these fact sheets and how to strengthen their local food systems. So within this fact sheet, the first part is to develop a municipal food systems plan. The reason why we encourage municipalities to take this step first is in order to help them understand where they're at currently, establish that baseline as we've been talking about, as well as to understand what the community's goals are and where they see the community growing in the next several years. This plan can help them then chart an opportunity for success in growing their local food system. With this plan in mind, we then encourage municipalities to focus on our remaining 3 recommendations. The first is to build the food economy. As you can see here, we provide some additional information on what that can look like, including some examples, such as exploring predominant industries in the municipality and how they can increase employment and revenue through attracting more food businesses as an example. The second recommendation is to plan for a sustainable municipality. Oh, next slide. Thanks, Allie. Is to plan for a sustainable municipality. In doing this, the municipalities can look at both the map and the different data points to understand how they're currently using the land within their town and what opportunities they see to focus on intentional zoning and develop more resilient ecosystems in the face of climate change, with a particular focus on how food and agriculture can play a role in that. And then finally, the third recommendation is to improve food access and security. And the data in this section can be used to support local government in providing targeted outreach, in identifying areas that are underserved and under-resourced, as well as informing where public investment may be necessary to further food access and security in their town. And so each of these steps includes these specific recommendations along with more general information for municipalities to understand how to use their fact sheets and to set up goals that will strengthen their food system moving forward. And finally, our last portion of our action packet is a toolkit. This toolkit is called Planning Accessible, Equitable, and Resilient Municipal Food Systems and is adapted specifically for our context here in Rhode Island. We expanded the one-pager by developing this toolkit to accompany these materials. Next slide, Allie. And so this toolkit is divided along the same top line recommendations that we chatted about before, as well as providing an introduction to the toolkit itself. So next slide, Allie. Thank you. So in the introduction, we provide municipalities with some background information on what food systems are, how the Rhode Island food system is currently set up around Relish Rhodey, and what our goals are for the system both now, in the past, and as we are developing Relish Rhodey 2.0. Additionally, we include information of different aspects such as justice, resilience, and sustainability in the food system, and the role that municipal governments play in their local food systems. They might be small, but they are mighty, as with most of our states. And finally, we include a very simple how to use section for the toolkit. Then within each of our top line recommendation sections for the toolkit, they all follow the same format you can see here. So to begin, we provide an introduction to the topic. In this case, it would be, what is a food systems plan? Then we provide key questions for municipal officials to consider when thinking about developing a food systems plan, building their food economy, ensuring sustainable land use, and improving food access. Then we include a short go back, Allie. Yeah. Then we include a short annotated bibliography of resources for municipalities. These generally include between 4 to 5 resources that were used in developing this toolkit that would further municipalities' opportunities to dive into these topics and strengthen their understanding of how municipal governments can play a role in developing strong local food systems. And then finally, each section closes with 2 short examples of how different municipalities from across the country are strengthening their local food systems in this area. In these municipal model sections, we were intentional to include both rural and urban municipalities, so that way anywhere in the state can look to an example of a community similar to their own that can inform how they might want to pursue strengthening their local food system. Next slide, Allie. And so with that, I want to wrap up with an example of how one municipality here in Rhode Island is actually using these fact sheets. So one example being the North Kingstown Economic Development Advisory Board. So for some context about this advisory board, it serves an advisory role to town planners and reviews progress on the town's long-term economic goals. And so in 2015, the town used our fact sheets to create a baseline of food system metrics for North Kingstown that included information such as the number of farms, commercial fishers, and other economic indicators that the municipality wanted to use to measure economic growth from 2015 to now. The board reviewed that baseline data and, using our new fact sheet, compared that information to what is currently happening in the town according to the new data that we were able to compile. And this was done to understand how their food sectors have changed pre and post pandemic, as well as identifying opportunities for economic growth for different industries in the town. And finally, analyzing their farming sector compared to the state overall and understanding the role that North Kingstown plays in our overall agricultural sector. And so after understanding that change over time, the advisory board is now using this new data to establish a new set of baselines for their economic plan. And this is just one example of how a municipality can use this data. And we encourage other municipalities to think creatively. And I believe Sheila Brush is on the call, who serves on the advisory board. And so Sheila, if you have anything to add, I would love to give you a moment to add anything as well.
Thank you very much, Max. It's great to see this, the new fact sheets that the Food Policy Council has done, and this wonderful packet you've put together. I really don't have anything to add. We're still in the process of getting this report out for the town. So, but we're finding that the Food Policy Council's information has been so helpful. The data that you have has just helped us so much to take a look at the food economy parts of our report. So we really appreciate what you've provided to us.
Thank you, Sheila. Yes, we're so glad that these are useful, and we definitely want to support other municipalities in using this data in their own context in order to strengthen their local food systems. So with that, I would love to open us up to questions.
And thanks, Allie, for taking us off of the slide share. We're happy to share those slides afterward, and I think Allie will certainly be posting all of them. But yes, we intentionally kept this presentation relatively short because we wanted to make time for questions that you all may have from your town perspective. So feel free to put them in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself. I guess I'm pinned now, so I can't see everybody else, but so I can't see if there are folks raising hands or unmuting. Does anyone have a question they would like to ask? Yeah, David.
Hi, yes. I wanted to, well, first of all, I just want to say these are fantastic. It's wonderful to see these again. It was honestly one of my favorite parts about being part of the Food Policy Council chair and all that years ago was these fact sheets. They're fantastic. I love seeing them. My question is, I'm on the Coventry Economic Development Commission now, so I'm going to take our Coventry sheet to them tomorrow night in our monthly meeting. I'm going to print them up here and in color because they look beautiful. Maybe I mixed this, Max, because I'm driving, so I apologize if I did. But I'm just in. I have it here printed next to me. The commercial fisheries. Where did that data come from? I'm just curious. I'm trying to think of where 35 commercial fisheries exist in Coventry. I'm just trying to think of things that other people on the commission might ask me.
Yeah, thanks, David. That's a great question. So the commercial fishers data comes from DEM. And so that includes any of the municipal residents who hold any type of commercial fishing license, whether that's for fish, shellfish, or crustaceans. So it is slightly broad, and I will say that several of our categories are slightly broad, just given the limitations of the data available. And so with that, we do encourage folks to go through the methodology as well, because that will help explain why some data, David, like you pointed out, might be slightly higher than we initially think they might be.
Thank you, Max. I do remember that from years ago, that it's anyone with a license. Yeah, okay, that makes perfect sense. And I will go through the methodology when I'm back at a computer. Thank you very much.
Of course, happy to help. Other questions?
Max, I just want to point out, I think both, what Sheila shared in that example and what David just shared is that the role of community members joining these boards is really important, so that, generally these types of committees, like I know in my town, the sustainability committee have open access to the meetings, and individuals have an opportunity there to bring this information in, who aren't, directly employees of the municipalities. So our hope is that the toolkit, and especially that questions section that Max developed in each of those chapters, can help you understand how to go into those meetings, how to go into meetings with your fellow residents of your municipality, or into meetings with your town or city elected officials, and just know what to say. I think it's one thing to be able to kind of show them the sheet, and it's another thing to be able to engage them in the right kind of questions that get them thinking about how they can make a change related to the data that is being shared. So I just wanted to point that out. And I think I don't see anyone else with a hand raised. I just want to make sure that anyone else who has a question feels comfortable voicing it. Yeah, Dr. Ritchie.
Hi guys, this is really great. I love this, data. It's just, and the way that you guys have really teased this apart to show the different sectors is really exciting. I'm excited to think about how to work with it, but I just want to try to put this across as I look at this and kind of start thinking about this in different categories. You know that I have a big interest in thinking about how institutions buy and feed people, meaning like mostly public schools is the biggest focus that I have right now, even though there's other institutions that you can think of like universities, et cetera, and the procurement process that goes on. And do you see that these can be used to think about how one can, and a lot of this I'm just formulating, just thinking about it, how to promote good food purchasing policies that will look at issues around sustainability, that will look around issues around promoting local ag business and food prep. Do you see this being able to be used for something like that?
I can answer first, and I think others probably also are, have ideas about this. I think a first step for a lot of folks who don't think about this stuff all the time is just helping them understand that their town or city has a food system and why it's important to frame that so that they can start to connect food production with distribution and consumption and access and waste management, and understand that these aren't isolated issues, but they're all part of this larger system, which, if it's healthy, can help the entire community, just do better in all kinds of different ways. So I hope that it's helpful from that broad perspective. And then, specifically related to procurement, I think that combined with other resources, for instance, from the National Farm to School Coalition or the Center for Good Food I don't know, it's the Center for Good Food Purchasing. I think I'm missing a word in there. The resources that are out there that are specifically about good procurement practices would be an excellent companion to having those specific conversations. I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in with response to Dr. Ritchie's question. If there's anybody who's part of a school system who wants to reply, that would be welcome as well. Okay, and if not, then Dr. Ritchie, you know we're always happy to continue the conversation and help you brainstorm about what next steps might be along those lines.
I wanted to say thank you for that, because I worked at after school programs and there was so much milk wasted every day. With I think it was, I forgot the name of the company, so Sodexo, I think it was, and it just kept coming like every day, just so much milk, and it all, and it lasts only a day or two was the policy. But even when even if we saved it, it just was bulking up, and I said, wow, I feel bad for these cows. It's just getting milked for nothing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I know that our Food Access and Nutrition Security Program Director, Rachel Newman Green, is on the phone. And I think you know a little bit, Rachel, about I'm not sure if those are state level rules or what, but it's a requirement, right?
Yes, that is a requirement of the federal school meals program, that a milk be served with every meal, so that if the school food service provider, whoever's serving the meal, doesn't provide a milk with the meal, then they can't get the federal funding for that meal. So yeah, that's the kind of issue that goes like all the way up to our federal agriculture policies, and and how they've informed both our economy and our notions of good nutrition, right? So yeah, that's complicated and intertwined, but that milk issue is something that a lot of people feel, that a lot of people are with you.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess the dairy industry is, getting a consistent check every month or whatever.
In the notes there, Janine, notice it's offer, not serve now. So that is a good positive change. They have to offer a milk. A kid doesn't have to accept it, I guess. But yeah.
I see a number of comments coming in now as well. Sydney, I saw you, and I'm not going to forget about you, but I want to make sure that we complete this conversation. So just wanted to note at first that this is a really important part of the conversation is, what do you want to talk about? What does it make sense to talk about with your municipal leaders as opposed to state leaders or federal leaders? The municipal fact sheets try to provide information that can help folks make decisions at the municipal level, but this particular issue related to milk isn't something that can be changed necessarily at the municipal level. It's a federal regulation. So for that kind of parsing of what it makes sense to do at the municipal level, I think it's good to take a close look at that toolkit, and also always feel free to reach out to us. I saw Patricia noting that something new for North Kingstown is purchasing fresh Rhode Island green beans and broccoli and flash freezing them for future months, which sounds like an amazing best practice. And Patricia, I bet that several people will want to follow up with you to learn more about that. If you don't mind putting your email in the chat, I think Rachel or Max would love to learn more about that. And Allison also notes that if you want to learn more about what the federal policies are around our food system, it's an excellent year for that, because this is the year of every 5 years, the federal government passes a farm bill, which sounds like it's just about farms, but it actually includes the SNAP program and many, many important nutrition titles. We are going to have one of these Policy for the People series webinars about our federal farm bill, and we have some amazing folks from the federal level coming to speak with us about both the agriculture and the nutrition side of that in early November. And glad to see folks connecting in the chat. And Sydney, we'll go over to you.
Hi, thank you. My question is about I just lost the thing. The amount of local produce provided for the schools. And I'm wondering how you measured that, because, I think it's great they're getting it, but we're curious here, like, what is the standard for providing that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Sydney. So for each individual town, unfortunately, there's no individual data of how much local food they are purchasing. And so that information at the town level is not available. What is available is whether or not they are purchasing that local food. So at each individual town level, it's just a yes or no answer. And then at the state level, that provides the total number of cities and towns that are purchasing local food. So that's the 39 municipalities. Each of them are purchasing local food. And that data all comes through the USDA Farm to School Census, which asks them if they are serving the local food or not, purchasing and serving local food, which is how we got that determination. Unfortunately, we don't have available as of yet any data that actually tracks the amount or tonnage of food that's being purchased. However, I do know that coming down the pipe in the next year or two, RIDE is going to be starting to collect some of that data. And so in future updates of this fact sheet, that information will likely be provided. But at this point, it's unfortunately just a simple yes or no, whether or not the municipality purchases local food, and then the total number of municipalities in the state that are purchasing local food for the school district. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I can understand the simplicity of a yes/no question, but obviously it's going to be all over the board of like who really is making an impact in supporting local farms and getting local food versus, as Shelby and I, does that count if a school buys like one bag of apples for an event at school and they're like, yeah, we buy local produce. So
yeah, it's unfortunately a complicated metric. And so we are definitely looking forward to I had conversations with staff at RIDE, and so we do know that it is going to be coming in the next, actually it'll probably start this school year. So by the end of the next school year, we'll likely have some actual data that would indicate how much each school is buying. But unfortunately, at this point, there's no data available for that.
Okay, great. Well, I'm glad you're going further with it. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Sydney. I think, as Max noted early on, these fact sheets are the best available data that we were able to find, and we want to continue improving them and, adding indicators and improving the way that certain indicators are measured. We have a limited capacity. We can't go, for instance, to the central landfill and start tearing open bags of garbage and weighing how much is food and how much isn't food. But we definitely want to do everything that we can to gather the available data in a way that's easy to use. Just also want to appreciate Lucia's comment that, the back to the milk issue, that this requirement regarding milk actually has an equity issue as well, because people from different places have different levels of lactose intolerance. And just to point out, I think that sometimes these federal policies that kind of encourage consumption of certain foods by encouraging production of those foods like milk and wheat and soy and corn has impacts on human health that aren't necessarily recognized as being part of the same system. So that is part of the systemic problem that you see there. And I think that's an important piece related to our children in the schools and milk consumption right there. Patricia also noting that the North Kingstown schools signed a RIDE commitment last year to spend $10,000 more than the previous year on local food and fulfilled their commitment. That's awesome, Patricia. And I don't know how many other school districts have been doing things like that, but I think that's part of what RIDE is going to be providing through the work that it's doing with some farm to school funding in the next couple of years, as Max indicated. And then Janine asked, how are you able to calculate the tonnage of food waste as a percentage by town? So I'm not sure I know what MSW stands for. So actually what I mentioned before about tearing open the bags of garbage, we didn't do that. But the Rhode Island, the central landfill did it with funding, I believe in 2015 or 2017. And so it's an average. We made an assumption that, that the amount of food waste in one town as a percentage of its total food waste was going to be relatively similar. And also, we still use that figure because they haven't revised those figures. But unfortunately, I think that it's probably not very different now than it was, 5 or 10 years ago, because the amount of food waste composting hasn't gone up dramatically, although it is going up. So that's how that was figured, and that's how the fees per town and city were figured. And if you want to have a deeper conversation about that, I think we can provide you with some materials from the municipal waste facility about that project that they did. So I think that makes it through the comments in the chat, and I want to make sure that we don't have any other questions or outstanding issues.
Just want to note one
Yeah.
thing. The next month policy for the people for October 17th, which is when we're announcing our 2024 legislative priorities. I shared that link earlier, but I heard from someone that it was not working. So I'm pasting a new link that is the direct Zoom registration now. So apologies to anyone that hit a dead end, but that one should do it.
Thank you, Allie. Really appreciate it. And just want to give a shout out to the members of the Food Policy Council who made these first fact sheets happen, Dawn and David and Sheila, and maybe any others who I'm missing. These municipal fact sheets all grow out of that inspiration that you all had to put these together, and we are honored to follow in your footsteps and update them and share these materials. So thank you everyone for joining, and we hope to see you next month.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.